Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm the program sponsor for the Eglinton Crosstown West Extension. I'd like to welcome you all to this live question and answer session, and thank you for all taking the time out of a very hot August Thursday to be here today. So just in terms of quick agenda, we're going to be providing a very quick update on the work that is currently happening on the Eglinton Crosstown West Extension, but really aim to leave the majority of the session open for questions. And the focus of this session is really to answer as many project-related questions as possible in approximately the hour that we have this evening. As we continue to evolve our virtual engagement format, we've included a call-in option for tonight's event. So in your registration email, you also received a link to join a Zoom meeting. So that gives an option for folks to raise your hand and ask questions directly to the panel, and we'll give a bit more information about that very shortly. Again, my name is Josh Engelyen. It's my pleasure to be the moderator for this evening's event. So my job is to keep the event on time, to ensure your questions are answered as best as possible, and to make sure we get through as many questions as possible. So thank you very much for being here tonight. We're just going to start with a land acknowledgement. So let us take a moment to acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of Indigenous peoples, including the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. We are all treaty people. Many of us have come here as settlers and immigrants in this generation or generations past. Metrolinx declares its commitment to building meaningful relationships with Indigenous peoples. We acknowledge the historic and continued impacts of colonialization and the need to work towards meaningful reconciliation with the original caretakers of this land. We acknowledge that Metrolinx operates on land covered by 20 treaties and that we have a responsibility to recognize and value the rights of Indigenous nations and peoples and conduct business in a manner that is built on the foundation of trust, respect, and collaboration. So thank you for that. And this event has really been designed to allow for as many opportunities for questions and feedback as possible. So you'll see that there is a mechanism for you to type in a question, which also allows other participants to vote for a question. And, many people do have similar questions, and we often see some repetition. So to avoid reading and answering similar questions over and over, if you see your question already written down, then as instead of rewriting it, we would ask for you to vote it up with the like button. As I mentioned, the session will be about an hour. We have a brief presentation, and then we'll take as many questions as possible. And of course, we have the call-in option through the Zoom room, and after our presentation, we'll answer a number of the questions that have been written down, and then we'll go to the Zoom room, and then assuming we have time, we'll go back to some of the written questions, which I expect we will. The call-in questions are taken on a first come, first served basis, and we'll try and keep each question and subsequent answer to 3 minutes or less to allow as many as possible. If you have other questions that don't get answered, or if there wasn't time, or you didn't get it completely answered, we would certainly endeavor to provide some written answers on our Metrolinx Engage site. And if there are questions that we can't answer on any specific issues, we'll aim our best to respond again also in written form. If you've just joined us, this event is being closed captioned, and you can enable this feature on your video player. And the presentation you're about to hear can be found below your video player or on our website. So before we get into the safety moment and the presentation, I'm very pleased to introduce the rest of the panel. So first we have Fernando, who is the project director for West End Connectors, the consortium that is leading the tunnel work that has already started at Renforth and Eglinton. We have John, who's our design manager for Metrolinx. Kelly Thornton, you cannot see her, but she's live from our Zoom room, and she's our manager of community engagement. We have Peter, who's the technical director for for the project for ECWE at Metrolinx. And then we also have Rick, who's Senior Technical Support for Environment from West End Connectors. So thanks for joining us, Fernando, John, Kelly, Peter, and Rick. And now I'll go quickly to our safety moment. And I think this is a good one, especially on a hot and humid day like today. Many of you know this, but I think as folks are out and about, it's really important to remember that with the high temperatures and humidity, simple reminders to stay cool. If you can, keep your home cool. And to try and plan your activities so you can minimize your time in the sun, especially during the hottest hours of the day between 11 a.m. and 4 p.m., avoiding exposure to extreme heat. Bring water with you, even if you think you'll be somewhere where you can get it. Sometimes, it's not as easily accessible, so make sure you have cool liquids on hand before you feel thirsty. That's an important one. And just to dress appropriately, wearing light colored clothing, breathable fabrics, and just, you don't want to be out there until you're really feeling bad. You want to come in or cool yourself down before that.
Hey, and Josh, can I add one more thing? Since
yes,
we're
John.
dealing with an era of climate change and climate resiliency. So keeping your home cool is not just about keeping your blinds drawn and the air conditioning on. You can, at a much lower, requiring much fewer energy inputs, you can help cool your house by using fans. They can actually bring down the perceived temperature by 5 degrees Celsius, or even better yet, close your windows, have fans running, and run a dehumidifier. That is a lower energy solution to cooling in your house.
Great. Thank you, John. Okay, so now we're going to start the very short presentation, and then we'll hit on the questions. So quickly, many of you have seen this before. This is the scope of the Eglinton Crosstown West Extension project from Mount Dennis. So connecting to the Eglinton Crosstown LRT that's currently under construction, all the way to Renforth in Mississauga with 7 stations, an underground section from Mount Dennis to Jane, an elevated guideway from Jane to just past Scarlett, and then a 6.2 kilometer tunneled section from Scarlett to Renforth. In terms of the advanced tunnel work that has already begun, and that is the scope that our team at West End Connectors are in charge of actually building. That's that blue section that you can see right there. It includes the twin tunnels, it includes the work at the launch shaft, and it also includes, I think you can see there, the identified head wall locations. So those are the concrete walls at the end of each station that the tunnel boring machines will drill through and become the boundary of the underground station structures in those locations. In terms of the schedule, which is the next slide, Daniel. Thank you. The work is well underway, as you'll see in the next couple slides that Fernando will be speaking to. So the work right now is focused on what you can see at the top line, the sort of orange line, launch shaft preparation. The work on the tunnel will be going from now until towards the end of 2024 into early 2025. We expect, if you look at the green line, TBM stands for tunnel boring machine. Well, so we'll have our tunnel boring machines arriving at the site at Renforth and Eglinton early in 2022. They arrive, they'll be assembled, and then they're launched into the ground, and we'll begin the actual tunnel boring through the middle of 2022 and into 2023 to be removed at the portal at Scarlett in 2024. The yellow refers to the head walls that I spoke to earlier. So that's some of the surface construction just associated with putting those head walls in for short periods of time at the different station locations, Martin Grove, Kipling, Islington, and Royal York. And then finally in blue is the vicinity of Scarlet Road, just west of Scarlet Road. That is to create room for the tunnel boring machines to be removed out of the tunnel, and then in the future, of course, for the trains to transition between the tunnel and the elevated guideway. So with that, I'll hand it over to Fernando to give a short update on the actual work that's underway right now.
Okay, thank you, Josh. You can move to the next slide. In this slide, you can see some pictures that we think that is the best way to present what is the progress of the project, about how the works are being performed in the launch out. That is the only site that we have open at this point. This is going to be the point where we are going to launch the TBM. So it is the point where most of our activity or construction activity is going to be located. At this point, we are doing the shaft. That this is underground construction that is supported by piles, but second piles. To date, we have done 226 of those piles, and we have only 47 remaining. So basically, we have done the 82% of this support of the excavation. Not only we have done most of the piling work. You can move to the next slide. We have already started the excavation of the shaft in the east part of this shaft. So we have starting to do, not to dig the hole where later we will launch the TBM. So we can inform you. I'm really glad to say that at this point that we are on track with the schedule, and everything is moving really smoothly in the construction of the launch shaft. I don't want to take more time. I think this is to leave the maximum time possible for the questions.
Thank you, Fernando. Which one of those is you in that picture?
No, one of me. So I don't have much time to go to the site, unfortunately.
I would encourage anyone who is interested, if you do head by the site, obviously there's work happening there, so not at the site, but you can see from the outside, both from Eglinton, from Matheson, and from Commerce, the work on the piling that is happening there. And always exciting to see some of this work starting. I think there had been previous questions when we've met with community groups in the past. The work is starting now, but we haven't heard about construction plans for our area. I just want to reiterate that while the work is starting, and you probably saw from the schedule, when the actual work will start in different local areas, there will be lots of time for engagement, and people will be well informed if there are any surface impacts, traffic impacts, or anything like that. People will be well informed of that well in advance. So I just want to reassure folks about that. And so just to take us to our last slide, just reminding people that you don't have to wait for these events to ask your questions. We're happy to answer any questions we receive. You can get in touch with us at our website. We have an email address, a phone number. We have a Twitter account. I don't see it up here. We can give a plug for that later, and also happy to meet with community groups. We've been continuing to meet with community groups such as the Mount Dennis Community Association through the summer. Yes, at Eglinton West EXT is our Twitter handle. So there's lots of ways to contact us and find out more about the project or ask your questions. So with that, I think we can move away from the presentation, and now we're going to head into answering some of the questions. So I have a number of questions that I can speak to from our submissions. Just a moment. Okay. All right. So the first question and we'll be passing different questions around to the right panelists, but I think I'll start on this first one. This first question has to do with the elevated Guideway, which is the 1.4 kilometer elevated section roughly between Scarlett and Jane. So the question is, whether the line runs underground or elevated does not change that it will still run along and have an effect on the area in proximity to Eglinton. So network connectivity should not be an issue unless stations are being removed in the fully underground alignment. In addition, the community would please like you to clarify what benefits the elevated section may have for people living in the surrounding area. The only trade-off mentioned is between local access and travel speed, so us concerned taxpaying residents would like more information as to what we are expecting to gain in exchange for the downsides of an elevated alignment. So there have been a number of questions about the elevated alignment. Happy to take this one focused on the trying to understand the benefits to folks in the surrounding areas. So jobs. So that's the bigger picture rationale. From a technical rationale, there are also a number of challenges to fully tunneling through this section, since the area between Scarlett and Jane is a floodplain zone. So while all solutions are technically feasible, tunneling here would require us to go underneath 3 flood-prone waterways, including the Humber, which creates some significant environmental and technical challenges. In addition, because we'd be going under the Humber, the stations at Scarlett and Jane would be very deep. They'd be 30 meters to be able to go as far as we need to go under the Humber, which is about 100 feet or 9 stories deep. And just for context, that's 10 meters deeper than the excavation that's happening at stations at Yonge and at Allen for the Eglinton Crosstown, where the line actually goes under the subway. So 10 meters deeper than that, which ultimately would mean a lot more construction happening right in the vicinity of Jane and Eglinton and Scarlett and Eglinton to build those very deep stations. So the elevated Guideway does avoid some of that really heavy duty, the deep station construction and the deep alignment. And then from a local perspective, we did focus our June public engagement on design ideas for the elevated Guideway, really trying to reflect a lot of the feedback that we've heard from the community about protecting the trees, minimizing noise, and having a good design. And one of our key design principles for the elevated Guideway is to preserve potential opportunities for public realm improvements. So whether that's under the Guideway or adjacent to the Guideway. And we're going to come back with a lot more detail on the design of the elevated Guideway in the fall, where we'll also be excited to talk about some of the public realm opportunities. So just to highlight, and with that original question about the benefits to the local area, we are looking at both minimizing impacts and actually places where we can create opportunities for public realm improvements through the Guideway. So that was a bit of a long one. But we know there are a lot of questions about the elevated Guideway. Hopefully that was helpful. The second question, and I'll pass this one over to Peter, has to do with snow and freezing rain. So snow and freezing rain will wreak havoc on the elevated section. Canadian winters will make the transit unusable because the elevated section will be exposed to extreme weather. Why can't this section be tunneled instead so that our tax dollars aren't wasted maintaining a giant concrete bridge that nobody wanted in the first place? So Peter, I'll pass that one over to you.
Thanks, Josh. And the last point to that question, I think you've talked to that with respect to why can't the section be tunneled all the way. So I think you've responded to that eloquently. I'm not going to repeat what you've said. The earlier part of the question related to snow and freezing, and what I would say is that exposed LRT have been implemented successfully in comparable or worse climatic conditions, and from an operations perspective, we don't have any concerns. We have examples for closer to home, TTC. We have examples in Calgary and Edmonton of LRTs being being implemented in similar or worse climate conditions. So from an operations perspective, we don't have any concerns at all.
Thank you, Peter. Good question. I think as Peter mentioned, we're not concerned. We are making sure the design of the vehicles and the Guideway appropriately accommodates for all the weather that we receive, both hot and cold. The next set of questions that we'll respond to have to do with the operation of the line and where we're putting special track work. So this has to do with crossovers, pocket tracks. Where will the pocket tracks and crossovers be located? Where along Eglinton Avenue West LRT extension will the pocket tracks be located for possible disabled trains? Where will crossover tracks be located at stations for short turns or entry or egress from the pocket tracks? And related to that, there's also a question about the future Jane LRT, north-south on Jane, and if there will be an intersection and an interconnection between the Jane LRT and the Eglinton West line. So just starting with the first one, it's when it has to do with the pocket tracks, we are planning for crossovers and pocket tracks just west of Jane and Eglinton Station, as well as at the terminal at Renforth Station. So those will be locations where if there's a disabled train, it can be temporarily stored, or where there can be trains turning back. So that will facilitate kind of an efficient and reliable operation of the line. In terms of the Jane LRT, the Jane LRT in ultimately when that happens in the future is at grade. So at the surface, the Eglinton West line will be elevated in that section. So the lines won't actually interconnect in terms of the trains, being able to go on either line. But we are working hard to make sure there is a very good transfer between the Jane buses and whatever other transit happens on Jane in the future and the Eglinton West line. One more special track work question has to do with where crossovers will be placed, and will they be placed in front or behind stations? And I think the question here is, if the crossovers are in front of the platform, it means that the trains have to slow down as they get into the station, whereas in places like Montreal, the trains don't have to slow down to get into the station. So at Jane Station, Jane and Eglinton, the crossovers will be west of the station. So if a train is turning around and coming from the east, it will not need to slow down. At Renforth, in the interim state, we do plan to have the crossovers in front of the platform, and then ultimately with the future extension to the airport, also to have crossovers behind the platform. And that's really a balancing act of not just the crossovers, but all the different pieces to make sure there's a really good transfer between bus and rail at Renforth Station. So 2 more questions before we'll go into the Zoom room. First, I'm going to go to a question about trees and Eglinton Flats, and I'm going to pass that one over to you. So this question is, how will trees through Eglinton Flats Park be impacted? How many trees will be removed to make way for the overhead tracks? Will they be replaced? So John, can you answer that, please?
Yeah, so I'm going to start with, when we talk about how many trees are going to be impacted, the first thing is there's 3 parts. First of all, and the first part is that we're working with our partners at the Toronto Region Conservation Authority and the City of Toronto to fine-tune the alignment to cross the Eglinton Flats. This is actually probably the single most significant thing we can do to reduce impacts to existing vegetation. We're looking at ways to hold it tight to Eglinton Avenue West. Granted, there are some restrictions because we want to make sure the relationship of the guideway to the roadway is safe. However, the next once we've kind of set on a final alignment, which, as I mentioned just a minute ago, we're sort of looking at alignments that are optimized to reduce the number of trees impacted, especially on the sloped landscape that separates the parks from Eglinton Avenue West today. The second part of this is, and this is part of the EA process, we undertake detailed tree inventory. We look at all, we count the trees that are in that area. We make a assessment of how many will or may or will be impacted. And again, that will be determined by the final alignment that we land on. And then when we're talking about tree removals, which there will be tree removals, Metrolinx has a tree compensation program. We will be working with the TRCA to get replacement trees into the ground as early as possible, because I think I've said this before, the benefits of trees and vegetation accrue over time. So the earlier we can get the replacement trees in the ground and growing, the faster we'll get the screening back that we want to maintain between the park and the roadway.
Great, thank you, John. And as John mentioned, we're working hard with our colleagues at City of Toronto and TRCA to see how close can we put that alignment of the guideway to the road, to the sidewalk, to minimize impacts to the extensive trees along this section of Eglinton. And we look forward to bringing more detail on the elevated guideway to you for engagement in the fall. One more question before we head to the Zoom room. So this is about transit-oriented communities, or as we call it sometimes, TOC. Will the stations incorporate multi-use, multi-story buildings that include retail, medical offices, small industrial, and residential? That is so that people can actually walk to and from the stations. Which stations will have lease space availability? Lease space could mean retail or office, which could be an asset. So first of all, we're going to be doing station engagements as part of the development of the planning and design for the Eglinton West Line, which will cover at a station by station level the types of amenities that could be considered for those locations. Specifically when it comes to development or transit-oriented communities across the entire provincial subway program, the province is exploring this potential, and there's certainly stay tuned for more information there. If you've been following it in the news, there's already work underway for 5 of those TOC developments along the Ontario line. So that's a bit of a different context from Eglinton Crosstown West, but that has been part of news releases for Corktown, East Harbour, Exhibition, King and Bathurst, and Queen and Spadina. And really the intent there is, some of the elements in this question about creating a variety of uses at the station to bring more housing and jobs closer to transit and other services within walking distance of the community. So those are our first set of questions. If we can pass it over to Kelly in our Zoom room, we can take some questions from some of the folks on the line.
Great, thanks, Josh. Hello, everyone. We do have a number of people in here who'd like to ask questions, so I think we'll just get started. First up, we have Rob. So Rob, you're free to unmute yourself and ask your question now.
Oh, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, right at the beginning of the presentation, there was some description of piles being built. So I understand what a pile is. I just wanted to, are they in relation to the actual tunnels themselves, or are they a structure above ground, or I just want some clarity over that?
Sure, Rob, and I'll pass it to Fernando, our expert from West End Connectors, in a moment. But the quick answer is that the piles are part of the structure for the launch shaft. So that's where the tunnel boring machines are actually dropped or lowered into the ground. they create the structure for that launch shaft. Fernando, is there anything you'd like to add on that?
Yeah,
I'm sure you could talk for an hour about piles, but
yeah, exactly. Basically, to try to explain, no, try to clarify a little bit more about that. Basically, that we need is to do a hole with the depth of where the tunnels are, to launch from that point the TBN. So basically, it's a rectangular hole that, and to do that rectangular hole, to support that excavation, we need to do a perimeter of piling that are secant piles that basically they are biting one to the next one. So creating a compound that protect the excavation, so we can go to the elevation where the tunnel is located. So basically 16 meters below the grade level. So, and is where the TBN starts. So the TBNs are not starting, the tunnel boring machine are not starting from surface and going down. They start basically at that elevation, okay? And they start from that elevation. So to do that, we need to construct that hole, and that is the purpose of those piles.
thanks, Fernando. Kelly?
Great, thank you.
Next question.
So next up, we have Lily. Lily, you're welcome to unmute yourself.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for taking my question, and I hope you don't mind if I do a very short preamble to let you know that we're very concerned about the elevated section from Scarlet to Jane. The concerns are not only environmental with regards to the trees and the wildlife that are not replaceable by tree compensation. That's not, I don't view that as sufficient, but this is about our quality of life, what we see, what we hear, and what we breathe every day. It completely changes the face of our neighborhood. It completely changes the face of my street, and it will probably uproot my family. In a time where I don't feel that I'm able to even have a choice about where else to go. I love this neighborhood. This is our community. And the green space that you plan on using is the heart of our community. It's our only peace of mind, actually, in this city. And I appreciate that you have challenges in your plans and your construction, but that does not override our natural space or the heart of our neighborhood. So my question is about meaningful community consultation. And I'm wondering if this decision is reversible. And if it is, what needs to be done in order to reverse it? Or is this, please be honest with us, is this a done deal? My second part of the question is specifically what will be altered in terms of Fergie Brown Park?
Thank you. Sorry, I forgot your name.
It's Lily.
Lily. Okay.
Lily.
Thank you for your thank you for your question, Lily. You had two questions there. Definitely, we hear you and good questions. I'll start in terms of a response, and then Peter, I'll pass it over to you just in terms of thinking about some of the construction impacts. Lily, specifically to your question about the decision and the approach. I mean, our work now is focused on delivering the best possible elevated guideway that we can, consulting the community and working closely with City of Toronto and TRCA. Ultimately, Metrolinx makes recommendations about the best approach for these projects, and then governments make decisions. So I think when you're getting into decisions about how these happen, can they be reversed, from an honest perspective, those are political decisions from our elected officials that are elected to make those decisions. Ultimately, we make the recommendations at Metrolinx. So I'm not going to provide a response to whether or not it's reversible. But specifically, when it gets into your questions about the community and the access to the park, I think as we've mentioned, our goal is to minimize the impacts, and in addition, we've been working hard to maintain access to all the parks and to stay away from the active uses like the cricket pitch and the baseball diamond and all of those areas, so that park access that really the community and surrounding areas really benefit from will be maintained through construction. So that's one thing, and I think we've said that before, and that's been something that we've been focused on throughout. When it gets into just the specific construction itself, Peter, maybe you can just speak quickly to some of the things we do to make sure that any impacts from construction and ultimate operation are minimized.
Yeah, so specific to construction, and thanks, Lily, for your question. Specific to construction, what we at Metrolinx have done, and I think we've done very well in the past, is that we learn lessons from previous projects to improve on subsequent projects. So from a construction perspective, our aim is to go in and go out quickly with all of that draws on things like communicating to the community what we are going to do, when we are going to do it, what sort of impact the community can expect from a particular construction activity. From a, I think your last question was related to Fergie Brown, and we will try and as Josh said, we'll try and minimize our footprint on Fergie Brown itself, recognizing that the usable portions of the park, the cricket pitch, etc., are left open and usable to the public throughout the construction activity. Josh, anything else we want to add to that?
I think just the other thing I would say, and I have mentioned this before, is that we're aiming to provide a more detailed engagement as a follow-up to our June engagement on the Guideway in the fall, where we'll be able to provide more details about the alignment around different amenities, what the tree impacts are, what the access is, all of those different pieces that will hopefully give folks a little bit of reassurance that some of what the feedback that has been provided, we've tried to incorporate that as much as possible.
Thank you
so
both.
Kelly,
So Lily has asked a follow-up question. I think this is great. It'll give us a chance to maybe clarify something that we've heard from other people since we've been engaging on the elevated guideway since about June. So Lily's asking for clarification about how the park itself will be altered, not the access, but the park itself. And I think we've heard some of those questions before and been able to address them by just reiterating, Lily, I don't know if you heard earlier on, but the alignment of the elevated guideway is not going through the park. It's up very like adjacent to Eglinton on the boulevard. So the park itself, I mean, the boulevard will be impacted and the trees on the boulevard will be impacted, but the park itself and people's enjoyment of the fields and the amenities, the swings, etc., will not be impacted. So, but
Thanks,
I know if you have, and I'm sure you may, Lily, if you have questions, you hopefully have our email and our phone number, and you can call me or Gurjeet directly and we can keep talking about this.
Thank you for taking my question.
Okay, thanks. Next up, we have Louis. So Louis, if you can unmute yourself, you're welcome to.
I have already.
Yeah, there you are.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I didn't participate on the whole program. I didn't hear all the presentations, but anyway, I come in maybe with a different view, which is no eyesight. What is being done for security, for accessibility, being it with eyesight or wheelchairs or whatever, and basically security. And not only, there should be somehow, as you're building, you should be implementing a way of having cell phone in the tunnel or wherever, so people can use Seeing AI or whatever else they have to use. This is my question for now. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Louis. So I think Josh or actually John could start off.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I just want to let you know that Metrolinx has accessibility design guidelines that are actually stricter, are more robust and even being implemented on the TTC today. So we can, if you want more information, Kelly can put you in touch with some of our accessibility specialists that we have on staff, and they can provide you with detailed answers to any questions you have on this item. And just so you know, we have a accessibility advisory committee at Metrolinx that informs most of our decisions, and and our accessibility team reviews the design proposals for all stations. And as for construction impacts, as Peter mentioned earlier, we, like any organization, sometimes have to learn lessons. And we have learned that from our Eglinton Crosstown experience on how to make intersections and sidewalks safer during construction, and the impacts on people who are low-sighted or have vision problems, have been taken into account. But I would definitely recommend reaching out to Kelly Thornton directly, and she will put you in touch with our accessibility specialists here at Metrolinx.
John, can you just speak brief? Sorry, Louis. John, could you just speak briefly to like SEPTED and the other things to ensure passive, that how safety is being considered?
Okay, so accessibility, was your question. SEPTED or safety is actually paramount in Metrolinx's considerations. And, when we talk about designing safe environments, it's not only literally about, a safe environment, it's about giving people the confidence that they're moving through a safe environment, because a lot of these kind of design issues affect people's perception of whether they're going to feel safe or not. So SEPTED principles are built into our stations. I mean, you're going to have the sidewalk. If we talk about the elevated guideway section, you're going to have the sidewalks that are going to be illuminated, and you're going to have the station, which is going to be supervised. But yes, crime prevention through environmental design is one of the underpinnings of all the work we do. And I could go into details about how we'll do it on any pedestrian bridges and ramps, for instance, how we work with these concepts on our stations, because of course at night it can be a little frightening to be on a near empty platform waiting for a train. But these are details we can provide you with if you want to know more about it. Again, if you make a request to Kelly, she can get you detailed responses, including diagrams and images.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, John. And thank you, Louis. Let's talk soon.
Thank you.
Next up, we have a D. Bowder. So I think you're unmuted already. You're welcome to ask your question now. Maybe not. So let's move on to Oliver.
Hi, thanks, Kelly. Do you not have any renderings of the area between Scarlet Road and Jane to see what the elevated area looks like and the stations?
Yeah, we do actually, Oliver. We have some very early design renderings, and that's from our June 8th engagement, which focused on the elevated guideway. I will put the link to that material in the chat so you can have a look. And there will be, the design is progressing as time passes and discussions are had with stakeholders in the City of Toronto and TRCA. So there will be more engagement on the updated design this year, and that will continue until the design is final. So you haven't missed much, but there is enough from June 8th that you will be interested to see as a starting point.
Yeah, I logged in a couple minutes late, so I missed that at the beginning, did I?
No, we didn't show the images today. We showed them in a presentation on June 8th. And that engagement and the material still lives on our website. So I'll send you that link in the chat.
Okay, thank you.
And then call us if you have any questions after that.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Next, we have Eric. So Eric, you're welcome to unmute yourself.
Thank you very much. My question is, when you get out of the train underground or even up above, would there be like a four-way exit so I don't have to cross the street and get hit by a car?
Is there a particular
I'm happy to
station?
If it's like where I live, Kipling and Eglinton, I would assume that it's gonna have two stations, and people, you know, run to cross the street, and sometimes they don't even look sideways.
So a few things there. In terms of the work that's happening right now, we are planning for at each station there's the one main station entrance building, complete with, you know, elevators, escalators, all of those things for people to have easy access down to the platform. For the underground stations, we're currently planning to have one station entrance. Those are primarily located on the north side. For Royal York and Islington, it's on the north west side. For Martin Grove on the northeast side, and at Kipling and Eglinton, there's a lot of work happening to figure out some options and preferred location there. In terms of safety, there's a few things happening. So one is we're working closely with TTC to make sure that there's easy connections between the north-south buses on those main roads and the station entrance building. And then the second thing is that we're working with the City of Toronto. They have a number of initiatives through their overall Vision Zero initiative about enhancing traffic safety for motorists, pedestrians, cyclists, and certainly Eglinton has been identified as an area where there's an opportunity for improvements. So as we do our work to put the transit infrastructure in place, we'll be coordinating closely with the City of Toronto to see what intersection improvements can happen in coordination with that to ensure as safe crossings as possible.
Okay, thanks. If you have any other questions about that, Eric, please feel free to contact us. So we have one more question here in the Zoom room, and that's going to come from Rosa. Rosa, you're welcome to unmute.
Thank you. My question is actually related to the elevated section of the LRT between Jane and Scarlett. Where do I find exactly what square footage of green space is going to be taken away from this community for the project?
So, Rosa, thanks for your question.
Yes.
So, Kelly referred to the June presentation material. That was our, we're all, that won't have all the information you're looking for, but I'm getting there. We've had these questions where we're trying to engage early, so we're still very much in the planning and design phase. We're not saying here it is, it's all baked, it's done. And we have all the information. So the June material that we presented has an initial kind of alignment, and well as samples of what the elevated guideway could look like, what our design principles are, where we're drawing inspiration from best practices around the world, what our lessons learned are from elsewhere. And then in the fall, we'll come back with more detailed look at the alignment itself, and we'll be able to provide more details on, sizing, any impact to trees and vegetation, those kinds of things. So we'll be able to provide a lot more information then, also as we've sort of worked closely with City of Toronto and TRCA at how we can minimize those impacts. Peter, is there anything else you wanted to say about that?
No, the last thing, and I think you hit it on the head there, is the ongoing tree inventory that we are undertaking, and tree inventory is a study where we collect the trees, measure their health, the sizes, and ultimately, and importantly, we want to map those trees to know exactly where those trees are, and then obviously we'll overlay the design onto the tree mapping, and that will give you or us an idea of the impact or the sort of impacts that the elevated guideway or ultimately the construction of the elevated guideway will have on the trees and vegetation.
I have one last question, and for me, I'm a little bit puzzled, and I know the politicians make the decisions. However, the politicians are elected by people. And the other question is, what is it a technical reason for you to have the elevation at that specific area?
Yeah, thanks, Rosa, and that I think that connects well to an initial question that was posed about the elevated guideway, and I gave some answers there. I'm happy to reiterate some of them. I think from a technical, obviously, we've done analysis of the full alignment. We've looked at a number of options, including what we'll call the mixed alignment, so that has the elevated guideway and the tunneled segments, as well as fully tunneled options. So the main reasons for being elevated in this section, both in terms of the overall line, providing the best ridership and best overall kind of travel speeds and connections for people using the line, as well as the fact that to go underground in this area, while it's certainly technically feasible, you need to go under the Humber River, you need to go under, there's 3 water courses, so you have a very deep stations at Scarlet and Jane, 9 stories deep, 100 feet deep, deeper than most other locations that have a pretty extensive construction associated with them, as well as sort of potential risks around, flooding and unknown soil conditions when you get that deep. So that's the sort of the main technical rationale, Rosa. And then we also spoke a little bit about, what are the things that we're trying to do to have the elevated guideway add to public amenity in the local community. So those are the main reasons.
If I just may express, I've lived here for 35 years. I provide healthcare services in the area as well. I can tell you the community is very, very dissatisfied with the decision. And we're going to talk to the politicians. We're going to give our feedback to the politicians so they can give our feedback to you, okay? Just FYI.
No, thank you, Rosa. And
it's not a threat. It's not a threat. It's just, it's just like, we're not happy. Okay? But thank you so much for allowing us to express our concerns and ask our questions. We definitely appreciate it.
That's the purpose of these meetings, Rosa. So you don't need to apologize, and we are engaging with the elected officials as part of advancing the work as well.
Okay.
So Kelly, I'm just conscious of time.
Yeah.
So do we have any more questions from the Zoom group?
Yeah, no, we're going to come back to the questions that were posted online.
Great.
So Josh, you should see those in your chat.
Yes. Sorry, it's just taking me a moment to pull up the chat for some reason. Peter, do you? Oh, there we go. Sorry, it's taking my computer a moment. Kelly, are you able to see that and ask the question? I don't know why my computer's taking a moment to pull up the chat.
Okay, just let me have a look.
I can read it right now.
Okay, yeah, go ahead, John.
Okay, so the question is, what types of natural environment surveys have been conducted? And what were the findings of the surveys? What impacts will be caused to the natural areas located below the proposed elevated section and section and the animals that live there. There is parkland, forested areas, wetlands, and a creek running along the north side of Eglinton from east of Jane towards the Humber that many deer, coyotes, and different species of birds and amphibians call home. So that basically the gist is, what are the impacts going to be on these natural, this wildlife, from the construction of the elevated Guideway?
Thanks. Peter, can you start by speaking to some of the environmental work that's been done, please?
Yeah, so generally, I'll probably need Rick to help with the environmental studies that are undertaken as part of the environmental assessment. But what I'll say is that we have studies such as natural heritage, noise and vibration, tree inventory, archaeological studies, and that are undertaken as part of the EA, the environmental assessment, or the TPAP studies, and those form the submissions that we make to MECP for approvals of the project. Rick, do you want to talk to, in general terms, the any other environmental studies that are undertaken?
Well, that's obviously a fairly big subject. The environmental assessment process in Ontario is one of the most stringent that's applied anywhere in the world. And one of the key fundamentals when you start that process is looking at alternatives and options for whatever infrastructure works you're looking to build. The number of studies, there's numerous of them and many thousands of pages, and they cover everything from geotechnical to hydrogeo to all the flora and fauna, water management, water courses, really everything that you can possibly name. Obviously, we've already talked about the arborist and the trees and the vegetation. In a capsule, in the short time we have, I would say that the work undertaken to look at the options and the alternatives, and there isn't anything that is ever built or constructed that you don't always weigh the benefits, and there isn't anything that's ever built that doesn't have some impacts. And the way the process works in the environmental assessment process is to ensure that all mitigation measures and everything is done to ensure that the negative impacts are minimized and mitigated, and there is a very extensive process to demonstrate the value of the initiative from an alternative standpoint, to ensure that these things are all considered. So we would take time to talk about every one of the individual studies, and there's about 30 of them. But I will say that the aggregate of all of them was intended to look at alternatives, to come up with the best approach with the minimal impact, and those impacts that will exist to be mitigated and remediated and replaced, to ensure that the end product meets the objectives for the infrastructure. And if we get into a specific discussion in the future about specific areas, we can do that, but it's a little too big to go in each one right now.
So I think, thanks, Rick, and I think maybe to this question we're happy to answer. And if there are any specific or detailed questions, there's a lot of different environmental studies that are completed. We're happy to answer them. I'm just going to keep us moving in interest of time. So the next question is, what is the cost of building one launch shaft and one extraction shaft for the tunnel boring machines? I don't think we haven't necessarily have the broken out costs at the tip of our tongues for this level of detail. Certainly the overall ECWE project is a $4.7 billion transit project. So this is one, what I think this question is one small component of that overall capital project. If the question is really getting at, what portion of the launch shaft and the extraction shaft are for the tunnel boring machine, for the tunneling contract, I would anticipate that it's not the majority of the overall costs of the tunneling. So are there any more questions? I think that is the last question for this evening, because I know we're running out of time. So again, I want to thank everyone for participating. We do have, as we said, the information about how you can get in touch with us on our website, our Twitter handle, our phone number. That was all available. So thank you for joining on this evening. Your feedback is really helpful as we advance this project. Please register on Metrolinx Engage to be notified of future Metrolinx events. And good night and stay safe. Bye.